Okay, back to Common Core. Yes, Obama administration is pushing this, but there are 36 states in the union. Now, remember, 46 adopted it. Of the 50 United States, 36 are run currently by Republican governors and 14 by Democratic governors. Ohio, of the 46 states that adopted it, just this past week, Ohio dumped it because of pressure from parents. Oklahoma is next. This is, and I'm saying this, you guys, people don't take you seriously unless you put the F word in front of things.
Well, please
I don't speak like that. I know, and I don't speak like that. I'm saying the word dangerous. I'll say very dangerous. And I mean that in the traditional sense.
Common Core is dangerous?
Common Core is very dangerous. One of the things they're going to do is they're going to do away with in cursive writing. Now,
cursive?
What does that mean? Cursive. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to say in cursive. I meant to say cursive writing.
You got to tell me why you think getting rid of cursive. I would love to hear this. Why getting rid of cursive is dangerous? Please.
One of the things is many of our documents are written, not printed. They're written. And what this does is all of these things, that's just one thing. But before you ask me anything else, let me finish. Arithmetic, you don't need to be able to get any answer right, whether it's addition, multiplication, division, subtraction. As long as you provide a good reason why you came to the wrong answer, it's acceptable. There are already umpteen different cities in California. The teachers' union have been ordered in not just California, but multiple states. They cannot give a 0 to a student. Even if they didn't show up the day of the test, they can't get a 0. If they showed up, they have to give them at least 50%. They cannot fail a student.
Well, 50% is failing from what I remember. I mean,
yeah,
No, they pass them. They pass them in the public schools. Now, let me finish. What it gets worse. They're going to start testing them. It hasn't been implemented yet, but they're going to test. And I'm going to tell you guys, I no longer work for the federal government, but I work for the federal government, okay? Work for the Department of Labor, okay? So that's all I'm going to say about that. But you can do some of this research on yourself. Now, the thing I like about your show is you guys say some maybe not crazy things, but some things, if they were said on other shows, people would call them conspiracy theorists. But the things you say are true because they're happening now. People said this years ago before your show existed, and they called people crazy. And you know what? I'll admit it. I laughed at some of those people. That was stage 1. Stage 2 was stop laughing and at least listen. Stage 3 was, you know what? Nothing's impossible. So back to Common Core. Now, keeping that in mind, they are going to hook your children up, and they're going to be doing testing, not with number 2 pencils anymore. They're going to be computer testing, which makes sense because everything is computerized. They want to give kindergartners, they do in many states, computers so that we're as technologically matched as other countries. Okay, so they're going to hook them up to computers similar to a polygraph. And a polygraph measures heart rate, perspiration, and blood pressure.
Now, there is something, before we go on, there is something that we should just address here. And we do have to go back to the cursive thing because I wasn't sold on why that's bad. But what you're talking about, I haven't heard about kids being hooked up to computers, but this is something that they've been talking about since the 90s, and there's a really good resource. Her name is Peg Luksick. And people can find videos of her speaking on YouTube at like school board meetings. There's one, just Google or YouTube, Who Controls Our Children? And if you have students in the school, it's definitely worth watching this. She was arguing against this in the 90s when it was merely called outcomes-based education. But what you're talking about, I think, and I don't know where a lot of your information might be coming from, but there is a real concern about something called computer adaptive testing. And what computer adaptive testing is that based on the answers that a child gives, the test restructures itself, right? So what it's allowing is for a categorization of children that can really help build a permanent record and catalog them into different categories, sort children. This was called the propedetic function of school. This is like the old crazy progressives from the beginning of the century. This was their dream, that they would be able to use school in like school would be like a way of forwarding eugenics. I mean, that sounds crazy, but this is all true.
Now, I'm so glad. You're Brett, correct?
I'm Brett. I do a show about school.
Okay.
So we were talking about, what was it, means-based testing?
Or computer adaptive testing. Now, one of the reasons why Common Core has started to draw quite a bit of criticism from the left as well is that it wasn't done through government, right? Like there's a lot of opposition to it because it seems to come from private interests. The Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation put up, I think, like $150 million.
They have lots of money. They must be evil.
Well, that's a tough one. I don't know about these Gates people. You know, I just don't. I don't know that much about them. I know that there does seem to be this syndrome that super rich people have, where they think because they've acquired or they've earned,
they won life. So they must know better than the people who lost life.
Yes. There was a story of a billionaire who took over an island in New York and started telling people they couldn't drink certain size sodas. I don't know. It's stuff of legend. I don't know if it's a true story or not.
I think he got elected mayor. Yeah.
Oh, wow. That is bad. My goodness.
And you know, I mean, this does happen. The fact is that people that do well do, you know, believe they know better oftentimes.
Right. And sometimes it doesn't even mean being, you know, a finance genius or the head of one of the most successful computer companies, software companies of all time. Sometimes just being like a really good comedian makes people think that they have this power to decide how other people should live.
I see. We're talking now. That's an Al Franken
Bill Maher.
Okay.
You know, like just people. And I said, boy, I was watching his show, and it was like, you know, 4 Hollywood elites sitting around talking about how the economy should be planned for lower middle class people. Karl Marx would love this, I said. You know,
he's a libertarian, Bill Maher. I think it's well, it's what he claims.
Yeah,
he claims to be a libertarian. I like people that claim to be libertarians, but you know, oftentimes they really misrepresent the ideas, and this is one of the things that kind of bugs me about the terminology libertarian.
Yeah,
is that so many people, it's hip to be a libertarian. This is the idea that's coming, the idea of human freedom, self-actualization, personal responsibility, peace. These things are coming.
Yeah.
And, you know, there's no stopping them. But there's going to be a lot of caterwauling along the way because people want to control your life.
Yeah.
Don't you think you're smarter than the other guy down the street? Isn't that what you really believe? And if that other guy would just do the things that you think that he or she, that guy generally is he, but I mean, you know, I'm trying to use broad strokes here, that other person would do the things that you want them to, wouldn't their life be better? Isn't it obvious? And that's where it comes from, the belief that you own other people. Because if you can control their body, control their mind, control their actions, and control their thinking, you're them.
So neglecting the problems or the dangers of government, people see government as this noble tool that they can use to make the world better by imposing their values on other people. Sure.
Right. It's this noble tool. What they forget about government is that every single time government is a death threat.
Exactly.
Because you can't get somebody to do something without threatening them under this current paradigm.
Right.
You know, it's interesting. If you persuade somebody to do something, you're called a manipulator.
Yeah.
But if you get into office or you know, do whatever it takes to get some social program pushed through, you're not called a tyrant.
Called a leader.
Yeah, you're called a leader. So if you're willing to use the golden gun of government, I call it a golden gun because it somehow doesn't seem like a regular gun. It's very special. But ultimately what you're doing is you're agenting out force against the other individual. Yeah, I do believe that one has a right to agent out force for things like personal protection. So if somebody wants to harm you or something like that, yeah, you have the right to protect yourself, and therefore you have the right to hire an organization or work with an organization that will protect people. So I do believe that if somebody has harmed you or stolen from you, that you have a right to recompense in that area. And if that person doesn't want to work with you to compensate you, then I think that there's some level of force that is moral. We have to talk about what works best, but I think it's moral. But when you're talking about somebody doing something in their own life that doesn't harm them, and you want to just initiate force against them, that's tyrannical. So if you know how kids are going to be best educated, and you want me to educate my kid that way, and you're going to steal money from me, you'll call it property taxes.
Sure. Well, the problem, though, is that there's other people who have power and influence who are very invested in this idea that we're arguing against. Case in point, Bill Gates, right, who's putting all this money up that was then basically turned over to a couple of small lobbying groups in Washington, D.C. that were very progressive. They wrote this curriculum. The previous caller, the woman brought up a lot of good points. Dana brought up a lot of good points and a lot of, I think, legitimate fears, things that I know a lot of conservatives are worried about. The dumbing down thing, the removal of more classical literature in favor of like government pamphlets like EPA.
All this crap
reports.
Is what's going to happen every single time you have a monopoly organization, and that's what public school is. It's a monopoly. The people that hate monopolies the most tend to be the progressives.
Yeah,
but they want monopolies they control. That's hypocritical and evil.
So they didn't start, speaking of monopolies, I mean, that was a name that was thrown at Microsoft a lot. The left started to jump in, really like the Occupy Wall Street types. They said, hey, man, these Common Core, they learned a little bit about it and how heavily reliant it was on these computer tests. Well, where did all the money come from to create it? Microsoft. And that was like that gave a lot of momentum to them opposing it as well. Of course, they probably, I mean, I don't think like Occupy Wall Street is filled with Obama supporters generally. I hope not. That would be weird.
I think more so than...
Yeah, really? That's discouraging.
There's a lot of that sort of socialism, social democracy kind of thing going on in the Wall Street thing. It's a very the Occupy Wall Street thing. It's a very that's those are the ideas that I heard when I went to Wall Street and talked to the Occupy Wall Street people. It was all about corporations. Now, I don't have any love for corporations either. I think that corporations are a government construct, but I believe that the free market and people in competition provide people with the best solutions. They don't always provide the best. They don't always provide great solutions, but the best solutions. And I think that one of the biggest problems is we have unfair courts. When the courts are bent towards corporations, you're never going to see justice. It's bent towards big government and big corporations. You're never going to get justice for the individual. It seems to be the root of the problem is a twisted court system.
Sure. And I think a nice way to, which is we're about to run out of time here, a nice way to wrap up what we've covered here with the Common Core, one of the best ways to maintain a control structure is to have people believing that they are free, right? So you are controlling how they think if you can. And that's what, I mean, even though that's what I would say the government school system was set up to do and has done successfully for over a century, now they're kind of upping it even more. So, they are using these testing models to basically remediate and steer behavior to a certain conclusion. Remediation, I've often heard it used as a sales term, right? Like you want to bring somebody back to the decision, the place where they can make a decision and get them to make the right decision. Oh, they walked away again, bring them back, get them to try it again. And now this is just the sales. Hey, we're selling you carbon tax. You got to buy it. So we'll bring you back until you buy it. And that's one of the dangers of testing and using a curricula like Common Core.
Well, if you were going to shove down a top-down governmental hierarchical organization, the place you definitely want to start are young minds.
Amen.
It's obvious.
Yep.
And any kind of organization.